We're getting some incredible pictures from Greece today where the protests have begun in earnest. In fact, we're seeing flames and fire started out on the street there. This is some of the anger that we're seeing following a civil servant protest. It disrupted public transportation. It shut down state-run services across the country. And Greece's prime minister is now fighting to keep the government intact because there is incredible outrage over the new austerity measures that are part of the bailout package, part of the deal that was agreed to in order to keep Greece up and running. Nick Barnetts is reporting on the ground in Greece for CBS right now. Nick, are you with me?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you describe a little bit about, we're seeing guys in masks throwing things. What's the scene on the streets out there right now?
Well, there had been a big flare-up in the protest that was largely peaceful for the first hour or so that it was going on. Several thousand people had descended peacefully in front of the parliament in Syntagma Square, and then a few anti-establishment protesters had begun hurling petrol bombs. And, of course, the riot police then responded in earnest with flash grenades and tear gas being deployed. Much of the square has been cleared out now, although the riot police have backed off a little bit, and there are some protesters that have returned back in front of the parliament. But many of the people that were there earlier tonight have gone away.
Here's the thing. If we go back about a week or so, what we're seeing is that there was a big vote in Greece to turn down austerity measures that were offered by the creditors. And the people of Greece went in and said, no way, no how. And all of a sudden, it started to really hurt. We started to see ATMs running out of money and other effects in the Greek government. And so the prime minister went back to the table, had this marathon 17-hour summit that ended Monday morning this week. And these new austerity measures that they've long fought now go into effect in order to get this bailout worth 85 billion euros or 93 billion bucks in loans over the next 3 years. What is it about these deals that the Greek people don't understand? They think it's humiliating for their government. They think that Germany are intent on humiliating Greece and the government. Don't they see that there's a problem when you're trying desperately to borrow money to keep the government afloat?
Well, and people here indeed feel that they're being humiliated because right now the government found itself with its back against the wall, where it had he was given, the prime minister, when he went back to the negotiating table, was essentially given two choices. You either vote in and implement this new deal that includes even deeper cuts than the ones that you had rejected before, or we will kick you out of the eurozone. Which, of course, the prime minister had to make a choice between which would be the worst choice of the two to make. And of course, the majority of people here don't want to leave the euro, despite the fact that it's come with very crippling austerity measures that have continued an economic depression that this country's been in for the last 5 years. So he had to make that choice and look at what his supporters wanted compared with what most of the majority of Greek people wanted. And Greece is just frankly unprepared to go back to the drachma right now. And so I believe the reason that he backed off in the face of those demands was that he really had no choice.
I heard a woman interviewed earlier, even before that vote happened in Greece, saying no to the austerity measures. And she said, look, we're suffering, our economy is in shambles, and our creditors are going to have to feel a little of that pain too. They need to help bear the burden. And yet, when you take it to a personal financial level, it's not, if you lose your job or if you get sick, you don't go to the bank and say, hey, I know I've got a mortgage to pay, but you're going to have to bear some of the burden too.
Well, essentially, what the problem is here is that the people who have been shouldering the burden for Greece becoming so heavily indebted are largely the people who can least afford it. That's why you have the majority of people who are the most against the new austerity measures, even to the point that they will say, "Okay, well, let's just leave the euro." Those people are mainly people who have lost their jobs, who have had their wages cut very down to as low as and even lower than 500 euros a month. Some people's pensions have been cut that low as well. And those people especially are saying, look, I didn't go to the Troika, I didn't go to the European Central Bank or the IMF to ask for these loans. Why are they making me suffer when they don't make the people that asked for this money pay it back themselves? Because that is also a big problem that has been going on for a long time in this country, is a lot of the rampant corruption, a lot of the rampant tax evasion at the same time that's led us to this vicious debt cycle that we're in.
when we're seeing these pictures of the people gathering out there, nighttime now in Greece, and we're past dusk. Is there anybody in Greece who really wants the job now of being the finance minister or the president and having to deal with these major problems? It just seems like you'd be stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Exactly. I don't think that there's anybody in the world right now that would want to trade places with the finance minister, especially in this position that he's in right now, because essentially, I mean, this government has been forced to go against what it campaigned on, what it was elected on, and the democratic mandate that it was given on. It was forced to essentially to renege on that, and say, look, since the bigger issue for us is making sure we stay in the euro, because we were not given a mandate to lead the country out of the euro. This is a tough choice that we ended up having to make, even though we fought very hard to get a better deal over the last 5 months.
What's the next step here for Greece?
Well, the next step is that Parliament will be voting tonight on the new measures in this deal. It is expected to pass. However, it's only going to pass because of opposition support, the main opposition party supporting it, because they also don't want to risk jeopardizing Greece's position in the euro. But of course, there will be a lot of political political problems with the elected Tsipras government going forth, because as many as 40 of his own MPs are expected to rebel against this, essentially leaving him with a minority in the government. So after this vote goes through, even if it passes, so there will be big trouble ahead for how long the government will be able to hold.
And on a more practical matter, when you're seeing hundreds of people in the street, when you're seeing guys throw inflammatory devices down the road, how does the police force there, how does the government respond to this kind of clash with the people?
Well, I mean, essentially, whenever this happens, it's always a very small group of people that do it, that are not representative of many people in this country. I mean, there are certain fringe groups that typically during large-scale protests like this end up clashing with police. And of course, riot police, although they haven't been as forceful and as how should I say, they've been a little more gun shy lately than they have been since before the Syriza government had been elected, because many members of the government now had themselves been part of street protests in the past, and so the riot police have been reined in a little bit. But essentially, of course, during a large protest like this, no matter who's in government, if you're going to hurl petrol bombs at riot police, they're going to respond. It's only common sense. But I would say that the people actually protesting violently are certainly not representative of the overall majority of people here in Greece.
Well, it looks like a rough night for the police who are out there trying to push back some of the more ruffian elements of this crowd. And again, we're seeing some of the gas being thrown, the incendiary device. It looks like it had the potential to become a very dangerous situation out there. You're not hearing about any serious injuries, are you?
No, not from what I've seen, because I mean it was going on right in front of me at one point, and from what I've seen, no injuries that have been reported. And of course, because the people who go down to protest here, and I mean myself included as a journalist who goes out to cover these things, I mean, people are very prepared for when these situations flare up very quickly here. So those who really go into the front of a protest where there's a potential for this to go on have been pretty well prepared, and so far, no injuries that have been reported.
Well, as you said, those who are least likely to be able to afford it are the ones who are getting stuck with some of these austerity measures. So it is with the strikes as well. The civil servant strike disrupted public services out there. Pharmacies joined in a 24-hour strike, which also meant that people couldn't get to some of their prescriptions that they may need in this case. It's a tough time for the people of Greece. Again, we'll keep our eye on the situation there. Nick Barnett, thank you for joining us from Greece. Appreciate it.